Welcome. My name is Kevin Hallinan. I am from the University of Dayton, and I've been trying to put together a number of people to work on what we're calling clean energy co-op utilities for underserved communities. And we're looking at trying to create a neighborhood utility. Especially starting with the pilot in the Twin Towers neighborhood of Dayton, working with the community partner there, East End Community Services. The real focus of this co-op is the neighborhood. We see them as the utility owner. It's for them, by them, with just some tools around them to support. You see, the community center still remains that trusted voice in the community and is responsible for the communication to residents. So when we talk about this utility, it's actually part of the community services organizations that exist for that neighborhood. So while I draw it separate here, here's the clean energy utility for underserved communities, separate from the neighborhood and separate from East End Community Services, or whatever neighborhood organization or social services organization that is in an area. There really is no delineation. One of the things the utility does for the neighborhood is it provides a source for jobs from people from within the neighborhood. The neighborhood, as owners, managers of the utility, does help to make, or does make, decisions about the utility and investments. And it also receives energy efficiency and renewable energy dividends, some for the short term and even a bigger amount for longer term. So let's talk about the clean energy utility. What is it? So first, it's the place where we would have a neighborhood energy consultant. This neighborhood energy consultant would work with community members individually to help them reduce their energy use and cost in the long term, or improve the dividend that they would receive at the end of the year. We'll talk about how they're able to do that shortly. How do they know what residents can do? That's important. But we see them meeting. They're people on the ground from within the community. People in the community know them, and we see that there'll be a trusted voice from members within the community. At times, perhaps they're responsible for hosting community meetings to engage the residents of that neighborhood in processes that require their decisions. The utility is also a source for workers to do the installation. Workers from the neighborhood being mentored, trained, and hired to do the installation. We'll talk about how that happens in the long term. And there's an information component of this utility. This isn't necessarily something that the community would provide, but it's an information system that would be in partnership with Emerson Climate Technologies, and it would be tools that any organization, any neighborhood could employ. And so let's dive a little bit deeper in that. I would add that information and intelligence is an important piece of, and data coming from within the house is an important piece. And we see several types of data present. One, we see data coming from the energy bills. that the residents will receive every month. That's useful information. We see data emerging from smart Wi-Fi meters, which are sending Wi-Fi thermostats, which are sending information to the cloud, which really helps us do a lot with, and I'll speak to that. We also will have information that the neighborhood energy consultant will help us collect. So one of the things that this smart element of this neighborhood energy center will do is to estimate savings, measure savings, and measure the opportunities for savings to the neighborhood energy consultant, and also to help drive priority investment in energy reduction. So let's kind of look at that. So one of our things is to drive priority energy efficiency reduction investments that the installers end up doing. Ideally, this isn't just energy efficiency, it's also solar. We'll speak to that in a second. So it kind of works like this. If we have information about each of the residences, all of their energy characteristics and their energy data, we're able to predict savings and estimate cost for upgrades. We're also able to look at the effect of adding solar and potentially downstream solar plus battery. And we can prioritize investments to effectively deal with the worst first within the community, investing in those energy efficiency opportunities and perhaps renewable energy and battery that provides the greatest economic value to the utility, to the neighborhood itself. As an example, you can see here if the y-axis represents effectively a return on investment. So a lower value means a shorter time period to pay off. And so this was a series of houses that we looked at, and some are more efficient than others. They don't have good payback, these out here. The ones that are the least effective have a much greater payback. So again, we can prioritize investments. Next up, we can help residents understand what they can do individually to reduce energy use. The thermostat is a thermostat providing real-time information on their heating and the cooling system is a very important data set in order to help us drive behavioral savings. So we can take that thermostat information and develop energy or real-time comfort and heating and cooling models for the residences with incredible accuracy using deep learning, machine learning approaches. We've been able to do this for many houses with a lot of success. With this information, we're able to run what-if scenarios. What if the resident changes their set point controls for their thermostat? How much would they save if they increase the thermostat setting 2 degrees in the summer or 5 degrees in the winter? We could tell them exactly how much energy they could save. This information would go back to the clean energy utility and help to generate reports that the neighborhood energy consultant would have on each of the houses that they could take to the individual community members. Last of all, the grid at times is very interested in managing demand response. Individually, the utilities aren't generally interested in spending a lot of time to reduce demand, but they are potentially interested in working with a group of or a cluster of residences to seek demand response at times when the grid is seeking demand response. And if we could get the grid to manage demand, then if we can help the grid manage demand by encouraging residents to for example, forego their heating or their cooling for a given time, then there would be reduced energy cost potentially realizable from that. Let's talk about how that happens. So here's an example of the room temperature going along, kicking along, so we're cooling, and then demand response event comes, and the temperature in the space will, on this hotter day, increase. We know how long that would take. For this house, it was about 2 hours of time before we got up to this temperature. So let's say that a resident had some minimum comfort condition that they would like to maintain in the house. Say the thermostat, under a high demand event, they may say, well, I'm happy to participate if it saves money, and I'll let the thermostat go up to 78 during that event. We would be able to convey to the utility how much time was that particular house could reduce demand by turning off the AC in order to respond to the demand event. Again, the whole point of that is that we would reduce energy costs for the community. So another piece in the puzzle here is a solar weatherized co-op. So it's an organization that would train new employees coming out of, ideally, the neighborhood, who at the end of their neighborhood training project could enter the co-op as permanent workers. So training new employees, being the primary responsible partner for solar EER installation, not just in the low-income neighborhoods that we're trying to support, but in non-low-income neighborhoods. It's still, the more we can add business through the low income, the more stable this co-op will be. And the more jobs they'll be able to sustain and hold for the long term. And of course, as a co-op, they will manage and own the organization. I want to say something about the energy retailer in this process. The energy retailers really are the intermediary between the utilities and the residents and the businesses. Let's talk about what they will do here. So one of the things is they'll take information, energy information, from the smart aspect of the neighborhood energy utility. So in particular, in response to demand events, so, there will need to be during high demand periods that there would be some real-time communication happening between the smart piece of this neighborhood utility and the energy retailer. Additionally, part of that information will be individual customer opportunities for savings. So we want to be able to we want to be able to create customized bills. So they'll process the information and create customized what's in it for the resident bills, not really bills, but perhaps it would be something like, if you do this, if you change your set point temperatures, this is how much your dividend will be at the end of the year. Anyway, a lot of work to be done there, but they would be kind of the point of so one of their capabilities is in developing bills and customized bills, etc. And they could do that. They would manage the demand response with the grid manager too. And when the grid manager calls for a demand reduction event, they would be responding. Just want to say something about the EERE and payment. So this energy retailer will also be collecting, not only providing customized bills to the residents, but they will also be the recipient of the utility payments. Those utility payments will not change much pre and post the investment. We want to make sure that every resident will realize a lower energy cost than what they were previously paying. But we also will need to pay back any loans that we might make in investing in energy efficiency and renewable energy. And so the energy retailer will be a pass-through, providing the clean energy utility an EERE payment that will be used to support the cost of the workers, but also potentially the dividend cost going to the residents at the end of the year for increased savings. Anyway, that's what they do. Yeah, I've already talked about these. Next up is the actual utility. So one of the things the utilities will do is manage PIP programs. PIP is percentage of income plan. Basically, it's subsidized energy payments, ideally coming from all other customers. So everybody else helps to subsidize these lower income residents. So we need to know who those are, and anyway, so we'll have PIP we need to know who the PIP customers are, because to be honest, if they're only paying a fraction of their energy bill, the investments and the energy savings from those investments, energy cost savings, will not be something that we can recover from the energy bill. So we need to know who those residents are. The utility also will collect from the energy retailer the utility payment for all the residents in total. They will also provide utility assistant programs, and here we're focusing on those residents that are effectively above poverty, the poverty line, or well above the poverty line, that aren't eligible for other types of financial support for solar and weatherization. So what we're looking at on this line is customized rebates for energy reduction for those residents. And we'll leverage all rebates that we can possibly leverage in order to make the investments more affordable. Also, critical player in this project is the Community Action Partner, which manages the HEAP investment. So there's money that comes federally, about 75% of the financing for weatherization that an organization like INDATE and Community Action Partner has, and about 25% coming from the utilities. So the utilities are contributing to this. And this funding is used to help pay for, in total, solar weatherization for low-income residences. Right now, only weatherization is permitted in Ohio, but we're working on trying to create a bed for solar weatherization, so solar panels plus weatherization, etc. One of the things that the community utility will do by working with the actual neighbors is to help complete the HEAP paperwork and doing the economic and energy analysis needed in order to justify the project, and that will actually make Community Action Partners' job a lot easier, and so they're very attracted by this local support. So we're looking to invest, no community member paying for anything up front. So where do we get those funds? One vehicle that we're looking at creating is a social impact investor ecosystem that would enable people with means who want to support social enterprise in our community and perhaps not want to invest in charities, which is money that goes away in a year by social impact investing. The investors don't need much return, but they'd rather be investing in something economically sustainable for the long term than a charity where that charity year after year after year is going to require a continuous chain of financial investing. From this, we are certain that we have interested players in the Dayton region who are willing and interested and eager to invest in social entrepreneurship, really enabling very low interest loans. So low interest loans, the utility will be responsible ultimately for loan payback. Another resource that we're looking to take advantage of is the county's workforce development and reentry programs, some locally funded, some through federal sources, and basically it's funding that could be used to support workforce development. I would even say mindset development, preparing workers to even be ready for workforce development, and reentry funding, and perhaps workforce development and opportunities for people who have recovered or in the process of recovering from addiction. We're trying and looking to leverage as much support and funding as possible. And the clean energy utility inherently will have to be responsible for documenting who has been hired, what kind of retention rates we've had, and then present that back to the workforce development folks within the county. I want to bring up the potential for the low-income housing manager and or landlords. The low-income housing manager tends to be just that organization that manages the maintenance of the facilities and the rental collection from within the neighborhood. And so one thing that they've offered is the possibility of restructuring the rent payment for EERE loan recovery if the energy retailer can't provide it. So for example, if we reduce energy costs, then there is the possibility of building energy cost into the rent, and if there are energy savings, then the energy cost would be less. If residents' rent didn't change, then there would be an opportunity to recover the energy savings, energy cost savings through that rent. Additionally, the housing manager does hire typically maintenance workers, and to be honest, we'd like to be working with them on hiring from within the community. The last kind of piece in the puzzle are the legitimate owners of the facilities. For example, in the East End Community Services Twin Towers area, there's one equity owner that was responsible for building the houses. The houses are designed to be rent to own, so that in 15 years, residents, had they lived there for 15 years, would it have been investing at least in part a certain percentage of their equity, and they'd be in a position to buy the house in 15 years. Equity investors, landlords, are very interested in improving the value of their facilities, and if the investments could have been done through other vehicles, they're even more excited by that. We believe also that they are interested, at least in part, to sponsor and support some of the investments that we make. And they also, they're a potential investor in the EERE because it improves the value of the houses. Second of all, they're interested in improving the neighborhood as a whole, and so they often have space and place grants to improve the surrounding neighborhood, not just the houses they own, because if they improve the neighborhood, they increase the value of their properties for potential resale downstream. The real key here with this type of investment is to make sure that we're investing in the neighborhood from within and helping the people within, so that in 15 years or 10 years, whenever the house goes up for sale, we're not really promoting gentrification of that neighborhood. Anyway, that's the story of East End Community Services Clean Energy Co-op. Kevin Hallinan is who I am again. The partners in this project are many. Critical is not only East End Community Services, but Clean Energy for All, and my friend Bob Pohl, Co-op Dayton, and our friends there, IGS Energy, the utilities, St. Mary's Corporation, and others. Thank you for your time.